All right. Well, welcome to our webinar. I really appreciate you being able to attend this. I hope it's valuable to you. Certainly let us know one way or another. We love to get feedback. So the webinar is how to establish a data governance program on a budget. And the hint is just get started. So you probably have all you need from that hint. You can just drop off and go ahead. But if you want to hear more, we'll certainly have plenty more content to share. So we'll move quickly through this since it is just a half hour. But again, wanted to thank you. If you do have questions, you can submit those through the question functionality, and we'll try to keep an eye on that and incorporate any questions. Feel free to ask questions along the way. You won't be interrupting. That's totally fine, and then we'll try to leave some time at the end for Q&A as well. Real briefly on who I am, who we are. I'm Kevin Campbell, the CEO and founding partner of DTA Healthcare Solutions. We're putting on this webinar under our product called the Compendium Data Catalog, and that's a tool that we've developed at DTA Healthcare Solutions over the past several years, and we won't go into what that tool is on this webinar because we're talking more in general about enterprise data governance. But if you're interested in hearing more, obviously I'd love to talk more with you about that. But DTA Healthcare Solutions is based in Minneapolis in Minnesota. We've been around for a decade, doing largely consulting around data governance and business intelligence and doing enterprise data warehouse development and analytics development and things like that. So that's who we are. That's who I am. I know you can see me on the video, but I guess I decided for some reason you needed another picture of me. So there you have it. So the agenda for today, we'll start by talking about some definitions, make sure we're all on the same page. Then we'll get into building the business case for data governance. We'll talk about supporting tools. What are some of the tools that are utilized as it relates to enterprise data governance? We'll talk about budget recommendations, and then, as I mentioned, we'll open it up for questions. So, definitions. First, we have enterprise data governance. Very broad topic, can mean a lot of different things. Our definition is that enterprise data governance is the discipline of defining, monitoring, and managing data really throughout the life cycle. So from initial data entry and capture all the way through to the use of data to make decisions across the entire organization. So all the things that are involved in that with definitions and validation and making sure the data gets to the right place and in the right hands, that's really what enterprise data governance is all about. So the second part of the title of this this presentation is a data governance program. So what is that? So the program is the roles, processes, and policies in place to establish and maintain successful data governance. So those are all the day-to-day operations really of data governance. And then we said we would talk about doing that on a budget. What is a budget? I think you know what a budget is and who isn't on a budget. If you aren't on a budget, then I definitely would like to talk to you more about our services and products. I'm kidding. All right, so let's get into it. So data governance is foundational. I say that, but then I'm showing you a slide where data management is at the bottom. The reason for that is that if you don't have data, there's nothing to govern. So really at the base of the pyramid, we do have data management. So that's data sitting in databases, that's data entry, that's data integration, moving data from place to place for analytics. So that really is the base, but data governance is in that foundation, because if you don't have good data governance, moving up the pyramid becomes more and more difficult. So data integration and optimization, how are you calculating fields, how are you mapping, how are you bringing data together, how are you optimizing your data? That really relies on data governance, on how you're overseeing that, how you're prioritizing, how you're managing it. And then at the top, analytics and reporting. That's what we're doing this for, so that the data can be utilized. So that's at the top of the pyramid and really depends on all the things below it. And data governance is a key part of that. Okay, so as you think about building the business case in your organization, excuse me, you really need to look at how does data governance benefit your organization. So what are the things that you can use to sell data governance to your organization, to leadership? It's not something that's intuitive to executives necessarily. So you may be somebody who is, maybe you're a VP of analytics, maybe you're a director, maybe you're an architect or a BI developer, and you understand all the problems that are caused by having data all over the place. We call that data sprawl, having conflicting metric definitions, having it take days to figure out what's wrong with the data as you're comparing. So, but how do you make that case up to your leadership and to executives? So that's where we need to start. Well, the main thing is we want to have data be accurate, available, and trusted. That's the key benefit. So, and this is most important. You might think, what's most important when we think about data? Well, it's security, making sure it doesn't get in the wrong hands. And true, that's very important. But if we wanted to have a system that was 100% secure, we wouldn't share data with anybody, much less people inside the organization who might see stuff they're not supposed to. So security really, it serves this key point of having accurate and available and trusted data for decision making. That's what we're trying to use it for. We're trying to understand, what markets we need, we should go into. We're trying to understand our employee satisfaction and our patient satisfaction. We're trying to look at how are we adhering to best practices and clinical pathways, things like that. That's what we're doing this for. So we need to keep that front and center, that's why we have this data. And good data governance gets you to that trust. That trust is really what is key. Enterprise-wide transparency, that's huge. That really builds into trust as well. If people know how things are defined, they know where things aren't a black box. That analytics solution, that report are not a black box. That helps build trust in the organization as well. So these things are really looking to get us to what exists, how are things defined and calculated, and then ultimately build trust in the data. So as we think about clinical data, we want to make sure that we're improving the care that we provide our patients, and we're avoiding issues where we're providing bad care. We don't know it, for example. And there's financial data. We want to make sure that we're being good stewards of our finances, and having well-governed data does that as well. So, and ultimately, we want to decrease confusion, and we want to, again, I'm sounding like a broken record, but we really want to build trust in the data, and that's what data governance does. Another benefit of good data governance is certainly efficiency. There's a lot of ways that we are more efficient when we're demonstrating good data governance. The elimination of conflicting definitions and calculations. If you spend any time working on metrics that might be calculated in two different departments, so maybe finance has a readmission rate or length of stay calculation, and maybe quality has one, and maybe performance improvement has theirs. When you come to a meeting and they conflict, it takes a long time to sort those things out. So we're looking to eliminate those conflicts and ultimately become more efficient in how we utilize our data. Shared code, better avenues for collaboration. So what that's saying is, when you have your report writers and your data analysts and your data scientists and your data warehouse team, when they are all looking at the same code and they're sharing code with each other, they become much more efficient. they're not reinventing the wheel. If somebody's already come up with a way, a really good way to filter through orders that are orders we want to look at, they haven't been canceled or they aren't invalid. If somebody's already done that, the next person doesn't have to come along and start from scratch and figure out, all right, I have all these orders in this table. How do I figure out which ones I want to do analysis on? So efficiency is huge. Security obviously is top of everyone's mind. The security breaches keep increasing. We see them in the news. We want to stay out of the news. So anything that we can do to help with security is huge. And what it isn't just, sometimes we think of security as just that your IT's information security department, that's for them to figure out. They kind of come in and make your life more difficult by adding more controls and processes and things like that. And they might do that, but security is also something that is helped in the broader analytics data governance effort, where as we're making things more transparent, as we're getting those definitions out there, as we're helping people see what's there, we can identify, where is there PHI maybe that people weren't aware of? Where are we exporting? What are all our data exports? Can we go look at that and see quickly and easily where are we sending things? So, info security tends to work on things like penetration testing and looking at networking and making sure that bad actors stay out and that there's proper controls just around, computer security and logins and things like that. But in data governance, having that visibility is a huge part of being able to make sure that the system is more secure. So we can identify sensitive data, as I mentioned, PHI, and we can have just a better view of things. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about tools. Let's talk about the landscape of tools that are related to data governance. So in this diagram, in the middle, we have the data. We have the data we're trying to govern. And this is a pretty generic depiction of data in an organization, but it's pretty common. So we have our data sources on the left, EMR data, HR data, finance data. Those are the systems. Those are the source systems, the place that that data is initially entered. Normally, there's some movement of that data, whether it's into data marts and data warehouses, whether it's into data lakes. It might just be into point solutions. In some cases, we may go directly from the data sources all the way to reporting tools, but this is a common mode of operation when an organization has kind of that intermediate step of an integration platform. So data is moved and transformed and put into an integrated data platform. And then from there, data is moved into reports and dashboard that's made available either at the detailed level, aggregated level, usually some of both. And then we have often standardized metrics that get brought to bear, whether it's CAUTI, CLABSI, readmission rate, average length of stay, all that good stuff. Those things are generated and brought into your analytics tools and platforms, and then your reports and dashboards. So that's the data. The tools surrounding the data that factor into data governance, and these are in no particular order, but we have master data management, not to be confused with metadata management, often confused, but they're actually separate things. Master data management is intended to be a source of truth for key entities. For instance, the most common first data set to be brought into master data management is provider. So we get our provider data into this master data management area, and we can make sure all the attributes that we care about for a provider are there. And then that feeds, it both pulls data from these systems and then pushes data to those systems often, so that we have a common set of data for the really key entities. Patient is another example, location or department or some other examples around master data management. So it tends to be kind of a mini data warehouse for specific entities and managing those, and then then synchronizing that data across various platforms. Data quality monitoring is another set of tools that you might hear about. So tools that are looking at your systems and looking for issues, missing data, invalid data. You identify rules, and your data quality monitoring will measure adherence to those rules and usually monitor and alert when there are issues. And sometimes those tools will also correct issues. They're also involved in the correction of those. So data quality monitoring tends to pull data from your source systems. It tends to look at your transformations in your ETL, your data movement, and then looking at your integration platforms, trying to make sure that all the data is correct as much as possible. Data profiling and classification. Those are sets of tools that, again, pull from those same systems that I mentioned and help you understand the data. So when we have such huge amounts of data, such huge volumes of data, it's not obvious what's in those all the time. So profiling and classification tools are helping us understand the data, what's in there, what are the particulars of those. Then we get to data catalog, and here's metadata management as opposed to master data management. Data catalog and metadata management tools, this is what I've been talking about with making everything transparent, making sure that we have a list of all the reports in the organization, the dashboards, making sure we have definitions, metrics, calculations, things like that. So it's really meant to pull from all of these things in the data section, and then there's usually some interaction with master data management. There's some overlap with data quality and data profiling as well, but that's kind of the thing that brings it all together into one place where you can search and find the information that you're looking for. And then some other things that we have around data governance. We have security and threat monitoring. So some of the things I mentioned around your info security, things that they will use to make sure that your data is secure, making sure policies are being followed. And then some other things, request intake and management. How do you get requests? That's governance as well. How do you take in requests for new reports or data sets? How do you prioritize those? Things like that. Incident issue intake and management. Usually those are the same systems. Maybe it's ServiceNow, it's a ticket. We found an issue with this data. And then education and data literacy. So tools that support elevating the data literacy in your organization so that everyone can use the data better. Okay, so some important things to think about. So we've kind of got the tools that are involved. We've kind of got the benefits, the things that your organization can benefit from with good data governance. Now, some other things that you need to consider as you move forward with your data governance efforts. Executive support and funding. This is obviously huge. If your leadership's not committed, it's going to be really hard to move the ball as it relates to data governance. There's going to be disagreement over definitions. There's going to be disagreement over how things should work. You do need leadership to be engaged so that they can help break those ties and help resolve those conflicts. And then, time marches on. People get distracted with other initiatives if there isn't good executive support on a regular basis with something like a steering committee. It's going to be difficult. And there really should be some level of funding allocated. So again, we're doing this on a budget, but we're not saying this is a $0 effort. So really, there ideally should be some level of funding allocated to the data governance effort, even if it's just for tools, to have some sort of tools around to start getting that process moving forward. Now, if you don't have funding and you don't have leadership commitment, you can make some strides as you wait for your organization to kind of mature and be ready for that. So don't dismay. You may just have to do some things in your own area. If you're on a reporting team, for example, implement some things like having definitions on all of your reports or a link to definitions. And it's going to be more of a manual process, but that's going to start to get the organization used to not just seeing a report, but also being able to say, how is this defined? Where did this come from? And having some of those things on a report is a way that you can get started. But ultimately, hoping that you can convince the organization sometime soon that they really should invest some time and resources and money into this. All right, so now when we think about budget considerations, as you saw the tools on the diagram, the price tag does add up quickly. And most of these tools are annual subscriptions. Most of them have an implementation cost as well. So as you start to add up the data quality monitoring and the data catalog and metadata management, they do start to add up quickly. So you're gonna be real shocked that I'm gonna say this as somebody who has a data catalog as part of our products. Start with the data catalog. And I really do believe that. This isn't just because this is our company, but the data catalog is something that you need to have somewhere to put these definitions, and you need to have something that people want to use and is easy to use, or they're just gonna ditch out on it. So if you've got an Excel spreadsheet on a shared drive, it's a good start to pull those definitions together, but ultimately it's going to be hard to get people on board with that long term. So the data catalog is really the thing that you can start with to start to populate over time and start to make a resource for people to utilize in your organization. Because really it is about transparency. That's a great place to start, especially if you don't have a ton of momentum yet organizationally. Getting things out there and having people start to know, oh, I can see the list of all the reports that exist, even the ones I don't have access to. So I know what to ask for, or I get to go see these definitions of these metrics, and they're all right there for me to see. That's huge. Just some advice: try to avoid overbuying. We see a lot of organizations, shockingly, that try to force data governance by buying really expensive tools. They think if we pay a ton of money, that's going to get people to get on board. They're going to have to, because we're investing all of this in there. And you wouldn't be surprised to find out that doesn't really work. So you want to try to find products where you're going to be using a lot of the functionality, because a lot of times what happens is you're using 20% of the functionality and you're paying for 100% of it, obviously, and that's hard to sustain. And then add other tools if and when necessary. So a data catalog does have some components of some of those other tools, not master data management generally, but data quality monitoring and profiling and classification. Those are some things that that most tools on the market that you're going to find around data catalog are going to have some components of those built into the tool. So you can start there. It's not going to be market leading data quality, but it's a place to start, and then you can find out as you go. It may be everything you need at this point, and you don't have to add another one of those tools, or you may find that you really need to go for a market leading data quality product, and that's something that you can do down the road. Personnel, so roles to think about, key roles as part of data governance. We have data governance facilitators. Those are folks that generally come from an analytics area. They don't own data governance, but they facilitate it. The owners should really be the people who are closest to the data, but there needs to be somebody to facilitate. Otherwise, you get into everybody but nobody type situation, which we want to avoid. So there has to be somebody who's got at least some of their job tied to data governance facilitation. Maybe it's a quarter of my job as an analyst or something like that to help move this along. And then we have data stewards. Those are usually subject matter experts. Those are the people closer to the data that are being facilitated, so that they're the ones who come up with the definitions. They're the ones who define the metrics. So those are folks that you want to bring into the fold as part of this effort. Steering committee members, so you need to have at least one steering committee around data governance so that you have some executive support, some leadership support around this effort. And so there is some time commitment for members of those committees to be part of this. You can start FTE neutral. As I mentioned, you can use partial FTEs for data governance facilitators. You have to obviously steal from some other things that they're doing though, so there has to be that leadership support in order to go for something like that. But I'll say again, avoid the everybody but nobody by making sure that at least somebody is on the hook for facilitating, not owning the data integrity, the validation, the definitions, but at least facilitating and moving the effort forward. Okay, so we've got a couple minutes left. Bottom line is just get started. That's the best way to move forward. It's enterprise data governance is huge. There's so many data systems, especially in healthcare, that are so different, and trying to get all of it fixed at once is impossible and overwhelming. So you need to take it one bite at a time. Take a use case approach, find a good use case, like maybe a corporate dashboard or something like that, and start to get some governance around that, and then move on as you get some success. Transparency, seek that first, as I mentioned, get the lists out there, get the definitions, getting people used to seeing where things are defined is huge. And then grow it over time. Grow the content, grow your sophistication over time as resources allow. As you get more leadership support, as they see how the organization is growing and they're trusting the data more, they're trusting the metrics, you can then grow the program. Okay, that's it. That's all I have today for a presentation. So I haven't seen any questions come up. If you have any questions, I can sit here for a couple more minutes, and you can throw those into the Q&A box. And if not, we'll wrap it up. I'll give you a few minutes to type. Maybe not a few minutes, but at least a minute. Any questions? You can always ask questions later as well. My email address is right there. Happy to answer any questions you might have going forward. Give a few more seconds here. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining. I hope this was helpful. We'll have more webinars coming up in this series around data governance, and we'll get into a little bit more detailed topics as we go. But again, feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions, and thanks so much for being on the call today. Take care.